What is the extent of UK's involvement in Ukraine? This is the question echoing in the corridors of power and across the globe. Our focus today is on recent developments that have stirred global attention towards the involvement of the United Kingdom in Ukraine. Leaked communications involving high-level German government and military figures suggest that British Army personnel are actively engaged on the ground in Ukraine. This assertion stems from an unencrypted telephone call intercepted and leaked to the Russian broadcaster RT, hinting that British troops were aiding Ukrainian forces with Storm Shadow cruise missiles, supplied by the UK itself. In response to these allegations, UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak confirmed the presence of a small number of British Army personnel in Ukraine, assisting the armed forces. However, he was quick to stress that there were no plans for a large-scale deployment. This revelation has sparked a global debate about the extent of the UK's involvement and its implications. Rumors circulate of British special forces operating inside Ukraine. In the swirl of global politics, the opaque fog of war often blurs the line between fact and fiction. Unconfirmed reports have ignited debates about the presence of British special forces on the ground in Ukraine. These reports, though not officially acknowledged by the UK Ministry of Defence, suggest a deeper involvement of British forces in the conflict than previously admitted. These rumors, along with the confirmed presence of a small number of British Army personnel assisting Ukrainian forces, have sparked questions about the nature and extent of international involvement in the conflict. Russia has been clear-cut on its stance. It has consistently maintained that any non-Ukrainian military personnel training troops to operate weapon systems in Ukraine would be considered legitimate military targets. This stance doesn't stop at the borders of Ukraine. It extends to the factories in third-party countries that are producing these weapon systems. This position by Russia highlights the potential risks of escalation and the thin line that separates support from direct combatant status. The Deputy Speaker of Russia's Federation Council, Konstantin Kosachev, has echoed these sentiments. He has suggested that by supplying weapons to Ukraine, NATO countries are edging closer to a path of direct confrontation with Russia. According to Kosachev, deploying troops to Ukraine could be interpreted as a direct involvement in hostilities, or even a declaration of war. This underscores the gravity of the situation and the possible repercussions it could have on the global stage. These developments raise significant questions about the nature of international involvement in conflicts and the fine line between support and direct combatant status. As the world watches, the situation in Ukraine evolves, with each new development potentially reshaping the landscape of international relations and conflict resolution. The implications are vast and complex, touching on issues of sovereignty, international law, and the very nature of warfare in the 21st century. In the face of conflict, where does international law stand? This question reverberates in the halls of global diplomacy, as the world grapples with the legality and implications of foreign involvement in the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. The day after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the United States government was reported to be reviewing the legality of providing arms to Ukraine. This is a delicate decision, as it hinges on a fine balance of international law and the potential consequences of escalating the conflict further. Meanwhile, Russia has taken a hard stance on these matters. Russian President Vladimir Putin has declared that even imposing economic sanctions would be considered an act of war. This broad interpretation of aggression poses significant challenges for nations seeking to support Ukraine without directly engaging in conflict. The Russian Defense Ministry has gone a step further, stating that if third-party countries allowed Ukraine to use their bases as a safe haven for aircraft, then their subsequent use against Russian forces could be regarded as involvement in an armed conflict. This stance places international actors in a precarious position, as they seek to balance their support for Ukraine with the need to avoid direct military confrontation with Russia. Since the end of the Second World War, the laws of neutrality have allowed states to provide weapons and support to a state unjustly attacked, enabling it to defend itself. According to this definition, third-party countries become co-combatants only if they resort to armed force against the attacker. This interpretation of international law has provided a refuge for nations seeking to support Ukraine, enabling them to justify their actions under the umbrella of self-defense. However, the situation in Ukraine is far from simple, and the application of these laws is fraught with complexity. The presence of foreign troops on Ukrainian soil, the supply of weapons, and the potential for escalation all add layers of difficulty to the interpretation and application of these principles. The legality of providing weapons and support to Ukraine is a topic of intense debate. As the conflict unfolds, the world watches with bated breath, waiting to see how international law will shape the course of this crisis and the future of global diplomacy. Russia's actions, a violation of international law? This question has been echoing around the world since the invasion of Ukraine. The international community, led by the United Nations, has been vocal in its condemnation of Russia's actions, labeling them as an outright violation of international law. At the heart of this issue is Article 2, Paragraph 4, of the United Nations Charter. This cornerstone of international law explicitly prohibits the use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state. The principle is clear-cut, and Russia's invasion of Ukraine is widely seen as a stark violation of this fundamental norm. The United Nations General Assembly, the main deliberative body of the UN, has not been silent on this matter. Representing the collective voice of the world's nations, the Assembly has issued a strong denunciation of Russia's actions. This global condemnation underscores the severity of Russia's breach of the international legal order. The International Court of Justice, the principal judicial organ of the United Nations, has also weighed in on the situation. It has unequivocally stated that Russia's actions constitute an act of aggression and a violation of international humanitarian law. Such law, which includes the Geneva Conventions, is designed to limit the effects of armed conflict, most notably by protecting civilians and those who are no longer participating in the hostilities. Russia's disregard for these laws has been a source of widespread outrage and concern. The actions of Russia have not only violated Ukraine's sovereignty, but have also trampled on the very principles that underpin the international legal order. This assault on the global rule of law has sent shockwaves around the world, starkly highlighting the potential dangers when powerful nations choose to ignore the constraints of international law. On this stage, where the stakes are high and the consequences far-reaching, Russia's actions have been widely denounced as acts of aggression and violations of international laws. Let's consider the implications of the UK's involvement in Ukraine. We've traversed a landscape of leaked communications, confirmed and alleged involvements, and the complex dance between international law and military intervention. This journey has led us to a crossroads of potential implications and risks, a juncture where the world watches with bated breath. The leaked communications, which suggested the presence of British Army personnel in Ukraine, revealed a new dimension to the conflict. This involvement, albeit confirmed by UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak as a small number, sparks debates about the extent of the UK's role in Ukraine. It also raises questions about the fine line between support and direct combatant status, a line that becomes even more blurred with unconfirmed reports of British special forces operating inside Ukraine. Russia's stance on this matter has been unambiguous. It views any non-Ukrainian military personnel training troops to operate weapon systems in-country as legitimate military targets. This stance extends to factories in third-party countries producing these weapons. The implications are clear. Foreign military involvement in the conflict carries the potential risk of escalation. But we cannot discuss this scenario without considering the role of international law. The laws of neutrality allow states to provide weapons and support to a state unjustly attacked, enabling it to defend itself. Yet the debate persists about when a third-party country crosses the line to become a co-combatant. Russia's invasion of Ukraine has been universally condemned as a violation of international law, specifically Article 2(4) of the UN Charter. This condemnation, from the UN General Assembly to the International Court of Justice, sets the backdrop against which the legal considerations surrounding the supply of weapons and support to Ukraine are evaluated. The implications of the UK's involvement in Ukraine extend beyond the immediate conflict. They touch on broader themes of international relations, the nature of warfare in the 21st century, and the role of powerful nations in conflicts beyond their borders. The risks of escalation are real, and they carry the potential to redraw the geopolitical landscape. In an increasingly interconnected world, the actions of one nation can ripple across borders, influencing the course of events in far-flung regions. The UK's involvement in Ukraine, whether in support or direct combatant status, is a testament to this. It serves as a stark reminder of the interconnectedness of our world, the fragility of peace, and the potential for conflicts to escalate beyond their geographic confines. The extent of the UK's involvement in Ukraine and its potential consequences remain a topic of global concern.